user guide for this. Could not possibly speak with more moral clarity.
Accusing Israel of all kinds of things.
Lack of moral clarity. Very common misconception.
We see, to some extent, this is a battle between evil and God himself, because if he can remove the Jewish people from the land, if he can take the land, if he can exterminate the land, when in Jeremiah it says the sun and the moon will disappear before they do, they can prove God himself a liar. And that is, well, there are no words for it. So when we have to have something that we say, we'll go mad if we can't find something that we can say, this is where I hang my hook. That is where we hang ours. What do you think of that explanation?
It's an interesting take on things. I mean, listen, this is a point in history where you will be able to clearly see and differentiate between the moral people and the immoral people. It's as simple as that. And as I've written many times, there's only two options here in this war. There is no third option. You're either standing by Israel, you're standing by Hamas. This is not a war that you can sit it out. It's not. This isn't just another war. And people that, talk about every other human rights violation and women rights activists and, UNRWA and all these people, all of a sudden when it comes, well, UNRWA is not a good example because they're actually embedded with terrorists, but, all these human rights organizations, including, by the way, the UN itself, and somehow, these crimes and atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7th and just silence. Crickets. It's like, where is your conscience? Where's your heart? It's tragic. And again, it's shocking unless you look at history, in which case you'll realize this is a script that keeps repeating itself.
With the next generation, maybe with your kids, how are they doing with all of this? How do you process these things with them, even with your brother's murderer? How are they dealing with all of this and processing?
There's no user guide for this, right? There's no rule book on how to navigate such crazy, complex situations. And there's also no sheltering them, right? When we were growing up, you could shelter your kid. He wouldn't even hear about things. Today, they're all on the internet. They can't, you can't avoid them seeing things that you don't want them to see. So I think extreme honesty is the best way to go. Vulnerability and extreme honesty. I think my kids are very well aware of the effects that Ari's murder had on me and the entire family. It affected them equally, I think maybe, when I was growing up, mental health was a taboo topic, right? Depression, like someone's depressed, it's like, today and this is a good thing, it's destigmatized. And, I don't try to hide from my kids if, I'm dealing with depression or anxiety or whatever it is. And I think that's net positive, right? There's no question that it's a scary thing for a child to see their parent depressed, right? But I think that it is net positive, and I think it's a good step in the right direction. And extreme honesty, that's the only way to do it. You can't shelter them. You can't hide things. You can't, pretend these things aren't happening. They know, they see, and so you have to confront it.
Yeah, I think that the worst thing is probably them seeing you going through it and not setting a good example for them. Like, if something horrendous happens and you tell them, but they see how you as parents are processing that and walking through it, you're setting the example for them to say, look,
correct,
this horrendous thing happened. Now we're just going to show you how you walk through that and how you get to the other side. I think them knowing it's not great. Obviously, we're not meant to live with these kinds of traumas that we have to walk through, but having that example set for you to see how you walk through it, I think is the key thing, which is what you're talking about. Hey, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm going to be honest with you, but let me set an example for how you can process it and walk through it yourself.
Right. Yeah, I think it's also a big pillar of Judaism. Let's not forget. I mean, I think when we say we're a light unto the nations, I don't think that means, and it's often misunderstood as if the Jews are supremacists, think we're better than anyone else. We're not better than anyone else, the same DNA as anyone else. But I think our value system that focuses so heavily on education and on the family unit and so many other things that have become, politically incorrect today, like whatever, we're not going to get into it. It's a controversial topic, but the point is,
because Israel's not controversial.
But educating your kids through example is a very big fundamental pillar of Judaism. And in a world, again, in a post-truth world where not only does truth not matter, but it's frowned upon when you make the claim that there's such a thing as truth, right? There's no good and bad in the woke culture. It's just different. Like, I mean, if the fact that there's an actual term for pedophiles doesn't show you how broken Western civilization has become. What do they call them? Minor attracted individuals? Really? You're coming up with a term? Like, so they've lost it. They've lost the plot, right? And so moral clarity has become so rare that when it does show its face, it's so refreshing, right? And without getting into politics, you could love Donald Trump, you could hate Donald Trump, but as it pertains to Israel, forget domestic issues. It's a whole different discussion. But as it pertains to Israel and the Middle East, he could not possibly speak with more moral clarity. And it's like a breath of fresh air, especially after a four-year administration that had just a total lack of moral clarity. So, you know, it's so rare today to see someone speak with moral clarity that every time it does happen, you're like, finally, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And while we're talking about children, I think we know we have many friends whose children are deeply impacted in many ways. I mean, they're daily living with trauma. I was walking through the streets of Jerusalem and I saw a mother with a little girl, probably about 3 or 4. And I just smiled at her and stopped her and I said, by the way, just want to tell you, we've come from England just to tell you you're not alone and we support you. And she said, wow, my little girl has just this minute asked me why everybody hates us.
Wow.
And 3 or 4 years of age, I said to her, pick up your little girl. And I looked the little girl in the eyes and I said, we came on an aeroplane just to tell you how beautiful you are and how much we love you. And I put my arms around the mother and little girl and they sobbed in the streets of Jerusalem. Wow. And I thought, how deeply and how young the children are affected by this.
I can tell you it is very much appreciated. You know, I think that many Jews, not only Israelis, Jews around the world feel very alone right now. And I think that, you know, media, specifically social media, but all media, perpetuates that feeling because all it does is emphasize the hate and the poison and the lies because that's what the algorithms like. And so when that perception is shattered and people speak up with moral clarity and with conviction and with the knowledge of what's right and wrong, it's something that's deeply appreciated. It's so rare.
We are encouraging people to go to a Jewish area. I mean, we do this, spend all day there, find a coffee shop, just sit in it, have a coffee, and as people come in, simply say to them this.
Love it. It's beautiful.
You are not alone.
Beautiful.
And
make me cry, guys. It's going to make me cry.
Well, it's that simple, isn't it? I mean, I don't think I've had so many hugs or given so many hugs as when I've been in Israel. Many, many stories I could tell you, but this isn't the moment. This is about your story.
Listen,
but I want to say to you that we're for you. And
I appreciate that.
You're not alone either.
Thank you. There's this, obviously you guys know the story, but those that are listening might not, there's this concept of the righteous people amongst the nations, right? I mean, Raoul Wallenberg saved countless Jews in the Holocaust and really just plain old normal Europeans, Germans and others saved Jews, hid Jews, and they're remembered in history as such, as righteous people amongst the nations. And I think that we're seeing people like that today, Douglas Murray being one of them, you guys being another. And it's really beautiful to see. And it's not something that I take for granted. It's not something that I think the Jewish people take for granted because, again, due to just the way the internet works, we just feel extremely alone. And so when we meet people like you, it's heartwarming.
Hopefully off the back of this, we'll see people start rising up. Maybe if they haven't, maybe they've been sitting on the fence getting splinters. Maybe we can see some people start to actually use their voice. Look, just post something online, be somewhat vocal.
That's right.
When we talk about abuse, silence always sides with the abuser. And so if you are being silent, thinking, look, I'm not adding to the voice against Israel. No, if you're being silent, you are allowing that voice to spread without giving it resistance. So hopefully people hear this. If they've been silent until now, hopefully they'll rise up, start giving resistance to the rhetoric which is being put out there, accusing Israel of all kinds of things. seeing lynchings in streets around the world of Jewish people. Don't just sit back and let this happen. Rise up, be a voice, take action.
This is a very important point, and it's a very common misconception. People say, I'm going to be quiet on social media because I don't have a lot of followers. I have a small platform and I'm just speaking to my echo chamber, right? We've all heard people say that. That's just simply technically incorrect, because it's not how social media works. If you have one follower, you have one Facebook friend, and you share something impactful and meaningful in a way that's easy to both consume and share, and that one friend of yours shares it, you just exited your echo chamber. You just accessed their friends and their followers. So nobody should think that they have a platform that's too small to speak up. Everyone should speak up, and everyone has a job. And I don't believe that this is an era or a period of history that we can afford to be quiet. There is no quiet. You're either with Israel or you're with Hamas. There is no third option.